There is a forgotten Viking building method, so effective, so warm and so durable that later architects quietly phased it out of official manuals. Not because it failed, but because it worked too well. Its simplicity contradicted the emerging advanced building styles that Europe wanted to promote. This was the earth-sheltered Viking home, a structure carved into the landscape, wrapped in soil like natural armour, and capable of staying warm in brutal northern winters without wasting a scrap of fuel. Archaeologists today still uncover remnants of these structures that defy common assumptions about Viking life. They weren't freezing in drafty wooden halls. They were engineering heat-retaining shelters that modern off-grid builders still try to replicate. And in this episode of In the Beginning, we're digging into how this forgotten design worked, why it was erased from later manuals, and how you can apply its principles in practical ways today. The brilliance of the Viking earth-sheltered home was rooted in understanding the natural thermal properties of soil. Earth maintains a stable temperature several feet below the surface, often hovering around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, depending on the region. That means the ground is warmer than the air in winter and cooler than the air in summer. The Vikings learned to exploit this by partially sinking their longhouses into the earth and then mounding soil around the exterior walls. Instead of fighting the environment, they partnered with it. The result was a structure protected from wind exposure, insulated by nature and stable in temperature even during the harshest storms. Unlike modern constructions that rely on processed insulation, they use the living landscape as a thermal battery. These homes began with shallow pits dug into the earth, often following natural contours or selecting spots where the soil composition was firm enough to retain shape, but soft enough to excavate with period tools. The floors were typically tamped earth, sometimes layered with straw or woven mats. Side walls were framed with turf blocks, sod, or stacked stones, which were then buried with more soil. Roofs were supported by stout timber beams and layered with birch bark and sod, creating a continuous thermal shell from the ground up. The sod roof, in particular, formed a living barrier against heat loss, moisture, and wind shear. The entire structure functioned like a primitive yet highly efficient passive solar, earth-bermed home that could remain warm even when temperatures plunged well below freezing. As European societies grew more centralized, masonry and above-ground timber houses became status symbols. The earth-sheltered home, though efficient, was associated with rural life and older traditions. Architectural manuals of the medieval and early modern eras emphasized symmetry, complexity, and materials that demonstrated wealth or alignment with new building guilds. Earth homes were too simple, too resilient, too unprofitable for the systems forming around construction trades. By the 18th and 19th centuries, earth-sheltered techniques were dismissed as primitive, despite outperforming many newer designs in thermal stability. The irony is that modern engineers once again study these structures for inspiration, especially in sustainability, off-grid housing, and extreme climate architecture. The real secret wasn't just the earth itself, but the way Vikings combined earthen insulation with interior layout. Central hearths created a slow, even heat that radiated through the compact interior. The low ceiling trapped warmth rather than letting it rise away. Entrances were often angled or sunken to prevent direct drafts. Animal stalls were sometimes integrated into one end of the structure, and the residual body heat contributed to overall warmth. Every design choice was a response to climate. There were no wasted materials, no unnecessary openings, and no exposed surfaces for winter winds to rob heat from. This synergy made the home so warm that actually modern reconstructions in Iceland and Norway often require minimal heating even today. Modern builders looking for durable and energy-efficient shelter can learn directly from this Viking approach. The first step is understanding site selection. Choosing a spot with natural wind protection or a gentle slope can dramatically improve a shelter's performance. The second step is using earth berming to insulate walls. Even in modern contexts, a structure backed by soil will lose far less heat than one exposed to open air. Builders can replicate the sod-layered roof concept by using soil, living vegetation, or insulated roofing systems that mimic it. A practical example is constructing a small root cellar or storm shelter using the same principles. Dig into a slope, reinforce the interior with stone or treated timber, mound soil around the exposed walls, and create a stable insulated chamber that holds temperature without mechanical systems. A simple, contemporary adaptation might begin by excavating a shallow rectangle about 1/2 meter deep. Build up the interior perimeter with stone, brick or timbers, then mound soil against the exterior to create a thick insulating wall. Reinforce a roof frame with sturdy beams, add a waterproof membrane, then cover the roof with turf or a living layer of grass and soil. Install a small, efficient stove or a central heat source if needed. This method yields a structure that stays warm in winter and cool in summer, just as the Vikings achieved. The earth-sheltered Viking home stands as proof that ancient engineering often understood the environment better than later industrial systems. These homes survived storms, winters, and even centuries of abandonment because they were designed from the ground outward, with nature, not against it. For survivalists, off-grid builders, and history buffs, the lesson is clear. Sometimes the oldest techniques are the most resilient. If you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did, subscribe to In the Beginning, and share this episode with anyone who loves ancient engineering and forgotten survival skills. More rediscovered knowledge is on the way. In the Beginning.